seller and I decided to put my home on the market, and I've all of a sudden got all of these offers coming in, and I'm just kind of like overwhelmed on what in the world do I do with all these offers. So welcome to Breakfast with Bev this morning. I'm Bev Curtis here at Hauser Brokers.
Good morning, I'm Kenny Hubble with Bev & Co. And so we have this scenario. We talked about buyers last week as far as multiple offers and how do we position your offer, your contract to be able to be the best case scenario for you. So now let's talk about sellers, Bev, as far as knowing what's the best case for the seller regarding receiving more than one offer. What does that mean to me? Does that mean that I'm actually, jumping for joy, or is there things that I still need to worry about?
Well, I think it's a matter of literally diving in and sizing up each offer, because right now we're seeing anywhere from 2 to, I've heard, up to 12 offers on one home. And so as a seller and you're trying to wade through all of that, it's not always about price. A lot of it's about the terms. And we always go back to price versus money, time, and sizing that up is convenience and price and terms and when do I have to move out, and it's a lot of moving parts and pieces of the puzzle. So let's say, Kenny, I'm your seller and you call me up with great news and say, Bev, I've got 8 offers on the table for you. And I'm like, that's great, Kenny, but it's like, what does that mean? It's like, how in the world am I going to figure out which is the best one for me? And can I take more than one? Can I do a couple backups? It's like, what in the world does that mean?
Yeah, so first off, kind of the scenario about what's going on. We obviously won't just receive all 8 offers at one time per se. So we'll definitely communicate with you along the way as far as we received an offer on your house. And what we'd like to be able to do is to be able to provide you with information about the terms of that contract. And so there's price, of course, but then there's, what are they asking for? What is a buyer asking for regarding a refrigerator included? Or do they ask for the washer and dryer? Did they ask for personal property? Did they ask for closing cost assistance? So all those different scenarios, we kind of break it down and give you an estimated net as far as what you can be expecting as far as what this offer price and the expenses you have associated with selling the house. Kind of doing a breakdown. So as the offers come in, offer number 1, offer number 2, we send that out to our sellers as far as knowing in a spreadsheet. When there gets to be more than one, it kind of becomes a spreadsheet because it's just easier to follow with that, to be able to say this is what they're asking for, and then is there an escalation clause involved? So we talked about escalation clauses on the buyer side of things last week, and so as a seller, we need to be able to say, okay, this offer has an escalation clause, this offer doesn't. This offer asks for a home warranty, this offer doesn't. And then we have the financing. And so why don't you talk to us a little bit about the difference about the seller side of things. What difference does it make as far as a buyer's financing is concerned?
So I think where that comes into play is if I were the seller, I would be looking at who has the strongest financial position in the offer. So what does that mean? Do I have a pre-qualification letter? Actually more of a pre-approval letter where they've actually gone through, double-checked their credit, checked their employment history, and know that they're solid on the financing is going to be my best odds as far as carrying that transaction through to closing. The other piece of that is with that pre-approval letter is who is the lender? Is this an online lender that I have no idea who they are, have no working relationship with them whatsoever? Or is this a local bank, someone that I worked with, know, trust, can walk in and actually have a face-to-face conversation? That is certainly going to play a lot more clout in your offer than a lender that's out of state and no one has a working history with them. The other piece of it is how much money am I putting down? Is this a government type loan where it's 100% financing? Is this a person that perhaps maybe it's total cash or very little financing involved? Is this someone that's got 20% down? The more skin in the game as far as down payment, it certainly makes your offer a lot stronger and makes the seller feel a lot more comfortable in following through. In addition to that, the earnest money, which really isn't part of the financing, but on paper it certainly looks prettier to the seller. Not always can we even keep that earnest money, but if somebody puts down $1,000 earnest money and somebody puts down $5,000 worth of earnest money and has better financing terms with a local lender, it's certainly going to paint a much more comforting picture. Would you not agree?
I do, and so one of the things to think about as we look at one offer versus another, whenever the offers come in from buyers, that's the buyer's way of saying, I'm interested in buying your house, and these are the terms I'm willing to offer you. So whenever we receive that, and let's just kind of back up a second and talk about one offer. As we get an offer, that now we have this, your option as sellers to be able to respond back to the buyer to say, okay, I understand those are your best options, but here's what I'm willing to do. So when we get more than one offer, it becomes the leverage is what we talk about all the time. As far as the leverage now comes on the seller side of things for us to be able to have a little more leverage to it as far as the sellers. So with the appraisal as an example, if we have multiple offers and we have 1, 2, or up to 12 or whatever the case might be, we can be able to have some terms that we're able to dictate back to the buyer to say we would be willing to accept your offer under these terms. And so even with the escalation clauses in there, to be able to make that happen, if the value is going to be going up 5,000, 10,000, whatever number above the selling price, the asking price, then at that point in time the appraisal is definitely going to be called into question, because if we could sell your house for $10,000, $20,000 higher than what we listed it for, we would have listed it that way because we're trying to be able to get you the best money for your house that we can as your agents and representative. So we need to be able to watch out for your best interest on the appraisal section to be able to take a step back and say, we are willing to accept this price and these terms, but if it goes over the appraisal amount, if the appraisal amount comes in at $250, let's say, and we have it under contract at $260, the buyer would be responsible for that extra $10,000. So if we can find the right buyer, and that's what you're saying, how much money do they have down and that sort of thing, all that comes into play for us to be able to think about, okay, yeah, this offer is only $5,000 higher than the other, you're losing $2,000 or $3,000 here, but that buyer is willing to pay anything above and beyond the appraisal amount where the other buyer wasn't. So we're kind of really looking at those appraisal terms with these escalation clauses and amounts that come above the asking price. So that appraisal clause, and more importantly, if a buyer waives their appraisal clause and says they're not making their offer contingent upon appraisal, that's even better.
Oh, that's absolutely much better. And the same thing when it comes to inspections. We've had some folks that have really cut down their inspection period time, which makes it safer for the seller. And you can also, as a seller, actually say that you're willing to do out of X amount of repairs up to a certain dollar amount and cap that off, and also make that part of your negotiation as well. Because, obtaining a higher price is great for a seller, but you also have to understand that from the buyer's perspective, they're more than likely going to expect more out of you when it comes to the inspection time, because in the buyer's eyes, they paid a premium price, and so they certainly want the bang for the buck and try to get all the repairs that they possibly can.
We even had, and not that this is going to happen every time, but we even had a seller last week that negotiated back for the buyer to be able to pay the title insurance. Because in Colombia, the seller pays the title insurance, which basically says, yes, I do own the property, and there's all the outstanding bills that have been paid. And so that's why that falls under the seller's realm of responsibility regarding the closing costs. But we had a seller last week to actually put that in the contract that the buyer pays the title insurance. So it helps for your bottom line as far as the seller is concerned. So there's a lot more terms involved with the offer besides just money. Closing date, maybe you need to be able to have a closing date come July, and we're going to go ahead and put it on the market now, because that is the best thing that we can be able to do, is to be able to take advantage of the low inventory right now, because we do not know what the inventory is going to be come May, come April, come May, come June, and so there may be more properties on the market. So right now it's definitely time to be able to have the house on the market. As an example, we just assisted with a seller to be able to understand about have a property that's in the southwest side of town, and it's going to be priced in that $250 range, and currently there's only 2 houses for sale, active for sale, in the Boone Southwest or Southwest, and we say Boone Southwest because if it's out in the county, it's not in the city, and that becomes area-wise. But anyway, the southwest side of town, under 250,000, between 200 and 250,000, there was only 2 properties for sale. So that's why we are talking about these multiple offers, just because of the lack of inventory.
So let me ask you this question, Kenny. So I'm a seller and you just put me on the market and I received a full price offer right out of the gate. Should I be satisfied with that? It's like from a seller's perspective, we hear about all these multiple offer situations and it's like, as a seller, it's kind of like, wow, no more people like me than this. It's like, should I accept it? It's like, should I be okay with just my asking price? Is that good enough? Or should I hold out and let more showings happen and take the risk that maybe this offer, this buyer might go away?
I think that all depends, and that's what we like to look at, is it depends on how many showings have been made. So if we got an offer and the offer came in at full price, but we have 5 other showings that are scheduled for today and tomorrow, then we certainly could be able to hold off on being able to respond to this offer until after those showings have happened. But there's got to be a certain point that we basically can kind of cap it to be able to say what's going on. So here's what we like to do. We, at that point in time, will let the other agents that have the buyers that they're showing the properties to notify them that there's an offer that we've received on the property and that there's a deadline associated to it. And so that way those buyers know whenever they're showing the house, there is an offer in place. Now what we do, the listing agreement actually dictates as far as if we can tell terms and if we can tell price, or if there's an existence of other offers. So we always like to recommend to sellers that if we receive an offer, it's best to be able to tell that next buyer that's going to show the house that there has been an offer received. We just do not tell them the terms of that offer because that just does not do the seller any justice as far as letting them know what that price is. So we'll let them know that there's another offer in place. But timing-wise, how long do you wait? The answer to that is if that first buyer ends up finding another property that came on the market and they withdraw their offer, now you don't have any offers. So it's better to continue to work with what you have when you receive it, and we'll help you walk you through that.
A bird in hand is always better than waiting for another one to fly by.
And another part about that is that bush that we've created for that bird to land on, we've kind of tried to be able to price you, and we have priced you as far as the top of the market, as far as our opinion about what's going on, what the appraisers are going to look at. So if we get a full price offer, we're telling you this is what we think the market price should have been in the first place, and so the buyer's basically just coming in and saying, yes, I agree, and I'll pay that. So I don't think the seller's harmed by getting a full price offer.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in the good old days, getting a full price offer was a beautiful thing, and nobody even questioned that. So we're just in a little bit different environment right now, and this too shall pass because real estate always goes in cycles, and we just happen to be in a cycle, but it will soon again change. So
the good old days. Thanks for joining us for Breakfast with Bev. I'll stop my singing. Join us next week. We're going to have a special guest with us as far as being able to talk about the what's happening with the. So we got a special guest next week. So please join us.
yes, thanks for joining in, guys. Have a good week.